tutorials at the level that Masterclass is doing them is not, 5 people in a kitchen shooting that. It's a team of it's a crew of 30. That's, I mean, they're really here's what happens when you turn it all the way up.
What was fun about the Ron Howard one is he reinvented how he could have shot a scene 5 different ways. So he said, when I shot the scene, we did it this way because we had to. But now if we wanted to, we could do this, and we could do, and then they went the whole system, and then we could have done this, and then they did the whole process. So that was fun.
Interesting, the phrase because we had to.
It's a movie.
Times, a lot of times you have ideas of what you want to do. I think Fincher said directing isn't standing around looking at little pictures and then matching the shot. It's when you look at how much day you have left, you realize you have 30 minutes of daylight left, and you still have 10 shots to get.
Do you know that Hitchcock story about it took 3 days. They hadn't shot a single foot of footage. And the executives of the studio are coming in just going crazy. And then he says, okay, we're ready. And they did an 8-minute single take. And he said, okay, we are now 5 days ahead.
All right. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are here on YouTube and you see a little link down below, go ahead and click on that. And you can actually join the conversation. If you're here and you'd like to, and you listen to us today and you think that you could have done better, you could have added to the conversation, you might have been able to. And all you missed was being here early with good audio and video and your knowledge. And so we'd love to have you be here by 6:40. Pacific Standard Time. Now we start talking as early as 5. If you get the email, you'll see little links down below, a pre-show and post-show and all of those little fun things. And so we start very, very early. If you're more than welcome to jump in and have those conversations, but you do need to be here by 6:40 to be part of the mic check. Once we do the mic check, we've closed for the day. So anyway, so that's that. And then we have the first hour, which is general discussion. And the second hour, which is kind of a more vertical discussion. And we're now sending out the agenda rather than changing it every day, which I was not known for doing well. I now just send the agenda out all at once. So you'll get the same thing every day so that you know what's actually going on. So today we're going to talk about replacing our hardware. Tomorrow we're just going to have an extended audio Q&A tomorrow. Video cameras, what makes them different on Wednesday. Andy Anatko. My friend Andy Anatko is going to be here on Thursday to talk about, his thing. So what he's done, how he got here. I promise that'll be a good hour. Andy is just an amazing guy, and it's going to be really fun to have him here. And then also Friday, there's been a lot of questions about how to get started. So how do you actually get into the industry? We've talked about how to be a producer, how to be a freelancer, but how do you become that? So we're going to talk a little bit about our paths of how we got into those things and then hopefully find some paths that people can use. And of course, Saturday is focused on education. So who is now doing the Q&A? We went back and forth. Okay, Chris is doing the Q&A. Okay, go ahead, Chris.
Good morning, Alex. First question comes from our own Sky Gleason up there in Seattle, and he wants to know if there's any tips to using PTZ cameras.
Yeah, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I'm borrowing right now one from Panasonic, the UE150, which is one of the highest ones. I think it is next to the Sony highest end one that you can get. And after playing with a lot of other ones, Bird Dog and PTZ Optics, I'm seeing that the motors count. If you really want to do a move during a take and not just cut from shot to shot, having one with smooth motors is a big deal. And then the presets, like in vMix, you can set presets so then you can have thumbnails and jump from shot to shot, which is really handy. So if you can, I know you have vMix at your church, you can use vMix to set up those presets, and that way you know where you're going. Because I accidentally did a bad take yesterday during church. My assistant didn't show, so I had to run the PTZ camera and forgot that 2 was the organist, and so cut to nobody home. Nobody was at the organ. So it's easy to make a mistake when you're not doing it all the time. And so I like the Alex's repetitiveness thing because, I made a bad shot. It's easy to do things every day.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
Anything Visca can be added to Stream Deck, and anything wireless for remote control use. There's going to be a little bit of a delay when you start hitting buttons to get it the camera to move. So just got to be aware of that. And then small movements are always the key to get it exactly fine-tuned.
Yeah, when in doubt, my recommendation is to not try to cut to a moving shot on a PTZ unless the operator is really good at what they do. The interesting thing is when we pick operators, we really look for gamers, not camera operators. Camera operators have a hard time with the joystick. Gamers are really good at it. So gamers are our target audience for a PTZ operator. And we found that by accident. I've told the story before. We just couldn't figure. I thought someone was panning. I was like, who started operating that camera in the back? And it was PTZ. And my PTZ operator was like, this is so much better than an Xbox, and so it was like, so, a lot more sensitive. And so it is. I turn all my dials down so that I move slowly all the time. I'm not trying to ever move fast on a PTZ camera. So you want it to be as least sensitive as possible, as least twitchy as possible, in my opinion. Now we use larger PTZs where we can put the cameras on them. So what we use is mostly telemetrics heads, and those are you can put heavy cameras and heavy lenses on them. The one that I have not used, so that is the Ronin head with the wheels. I would probably go ahead and use it. Yeah, there you go. PTZ optics. Yep, that's great. Ronin or DJI makes a head with a controller with wheels, and the wheels are just, I played with it at NAB and I haven't gotten to get it yet, but it's the most beautiful. Like I would actually do nice pan and tilts with that if I had it. I haven't gotten a chance to put it in my system. But the pre-programming is really, really important with PTZs. And the other hard thing we have is just matching them to the rest of our cameras. Their color science tends to be very limited. So we try not to have things where they're intercutting with a face between a PTZ and another, let's say a Blackmagic camera. Go ahead, Stuart, then Neil, then Paul, and then Chris.
For those of us on a rather tight budget, learn from my experience. A Swan IP-based camera, you will get more accurate movement of the PT head with a hammer than you will from the control interface. And second one, for adapting small cameras like the Blackmagic Pocket camera and what have you, you can get gimbals and controllers from Hobby King for like large cameras in aircraft for photography and what have you, that will allow you to use a regular or remote control to control the output of the gimbal, so you can point it where you want to fly it. And they can also be used for a camcorder or the like when you're out at a location.
Go ahead, Neil.
Yeah, in terms of the color science itself, even with the exact same camera and same model, looking at the exact same subject, there can be discrepancies, like big discrepancies within color. And if you're going to use more than one camera, try to take the time to calibrate the color the gamma and everything before you take them on set.
Well, and the thing to know is that you are going to always color to the lowest common denominator. So the worst camera in your kit is what is going to rule your color. That's what you always have to know, is that you're always going to go down to that camera, unless it's like some kind of insert shot. You're always going to be limited to that camera. So if you have a bunch of Blackmagic stuff, that's great, but you're going to get the PTZ to look as good as it can, and then you're going to make all the other cameras that have more controls look like that, because it's so hard to get a PTZ. The color controls on most of the PTZs that we've used have been extremely limited. Go ahead, and Paul, and then Chris.
Yeah, the PTZ that I use is the BCC 950. I'm going to see if I can't actually find it. There it is. Look at it.
Oh,
let's go down and find it.
Yeah.
And if you're on a beer budget and you want a champagne camera, it's got this incredible remote that you can use to, boy, it's not showing up very well, but you can use this to control the camera. It's got up, down, magnification, volume, and everything. It's complete package.
I have to admit that I've gone through that. I bought two of those, and they both, like, I played with them for a day and then never used them again. Like, it was just like, it was one of the things like, oh, this is going to work for this project, and then it never did. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay.
I was going to say, a good friend of mine, who's a sports cameraman. He's one of these types that can follow a golf ball from the tee all the way to the hole. He built some Danny Zemanek. He's in the room sometimes, or as an attendee. He built a controller once using a bowling ball, so that all of the moves had inertia to them, and you could and then slow it down and stuff. It was really a fascinating experiment that he did, but he had a few of them. He'd shoot stuff like overhead shots at sporting events,
right?
Wrestling and things like that. It was very interesting to add the inertia of the bowling ball to the control.
Yeah, absolutely. Sky.
Well, thank you all. And yes, there is still lots to learn how to plug in. And this also came with what is it, John? The not Huddle controller.
The Huddle Cam controller that controls that PTZ optics. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to try to glue it all together. This is again the beauty of community. John had a spare. I had a need. UPS delivered it, and so now we're figuring out how to make it work. Thanks.
For cooking, they're best used hung upside down over top of your cooking area. So that's where we use them the most for that. That is a great use of the PTZ because you can get a lot of framing.
Well, we're also replacing like a $200 little Panasonic Handycam thing. So I think anything's going to be better than that.
Absolutely. Next question.
Next question is from Guy Cochran in Seattle, and he says that the Masterclass folks just released a bread making course, and he was wondering if we could watch just the trailer and maybe break it down.
Yeah, let's do that.
I wonder if somebody might have that queued up, Guy.
I think I just might. It's actually just the trailer seemed not to have as pretty a shot, so I'm gonna just dip into one of the courses, and maybe Alex could do one of the teardowns from maybe like this overhead shot. Like any critique or anybody else want to dive in?
I think it's good. I mean, what I like about it is it doesn't look completely clean and sterile. So it's got a little bit of flow to it. And I guarantee, knowing Masterclass, that they didn't do that by accident. So they're definitely making it look like a certain thing. I have a thing about, someone else is going to ask another question, and I looked at it with around cameras being directly over. It's a little hard. They either have to be pretty far down or over on the. If I feel like that overhead shot is crossing the line just a little bit, and it makes it feel a little uncomfortable. Oh, that looks really tasty though. Go ahead, Chris.
The thing about the overhead shot, and I've done a few cooking series. I worked for Martin Yan for a year. Is you have to decide: is the overhead shot what the chef is seeing, or is it what a very tall audience member would see if they were standing close to your counter?
Yeah, and I
typically it's done with a mirror and a camera on the one of the normal.
Well, nowadays though, we used to do mirrors, but since the PTZs got better, a lot of us use. I mean, a lot of the cooking stuff that I've done is all with PTZs hung from the ceiling. Is where and again, this one is as close as they could get to overhead, but again, it has this weird. This is something I've seen in a couple different ones. It's on the other side of her, which makes it uncomfortable. I really wished that I could see. I've definitely, especially looking at this and looking at the Amazon cooking that we're going to talk about a little later, I think that makes me super uncomfortable to have it over that direction.
What's weird about this is the liquid she's pouring is going up.
Yeah.
And that's weird to me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Jeffrey?
The first shot that he showed, I felt that the Kelvin on the lighting was a little bit towards the 3400 style. Now I'm looking at this, it looks to be more higher end Kelvin. And so, but my bigger question was, would you want to do a lower Kelvin light to kind of give it more of a home feel or anything like that?
Well, it's not really the Kelvin. It's where you shade it to. I mean, it's where you color it to. I mean, you can shoot at 56 or 32. It's not the Kelvin of the lights isn't going to affect that as much. I will agree with you that this wide shot it's not a color of the lights that's going to affect the color. It's where it gets colored too, because your cameras are just going. You're gonna white balance that to wherever it's going to go. So you could shoot at 56 or 32. It could look the same, but it's where you. But to your point, is it warm or cool? I do think that the cyan in this wide shot is higher than the overhead shot. To what you're saying. In my opinion, looking at the shot. Interesting note, by the way, I did not see this get shot, but I'm willing to wager that this is a 4-wall or a 3-wall. So she is in a set. Like when you look at that set, like when you think about what's possible and everything else, they didn't go find, to my knowledge, all the master classes are done this way. They did not go find a space. They built it. You know, like they literally built her space, that space that you're looking at, from scratch. You know, in a sound stage, not in a. They're not trying to find the perfect. They didn't go site, you know, surveys. I can almost guarantee it. That they built it exactly the way that they wanted to have it. Go ahead, Sky, and then Neil, then Stuart, then Jason.
I was just curious about, you're talking about lighting, and again with Madeline, we go more. I'm shooting 4200 because her background is all a lot of oranges and reds. So I'm just curious.
The color light doesn't matter. The other colors, if you're matching, you know, if you're matching windows or you're matching fluorescence or whatever, but in itself, the color of the light doesn't affect the color of the image. What affects the color of the image is just where you know, how you do the curves later. But if you have to interact with other lights, then you choose color of lights that match those. But the color, like in a controlled environment like this, the color can be whatever they say it's going to be, and it would all look the same in the end, whether it's 32 or 56. Go ahead, Neil.
Which is what matters, yeah.
Can you pause it real quick? If you look at the this is 100% on a set. The amount of space that you need for this lighting to do what it's doing across the whole set. Yeah, that is.
Yeah, it's
I worked
clearly
on a bunch of cooking shows. You can clearly see a directional, like what is considered a key light. But at the same time, in order to fill in that shadows, you have to have a wraparound of a lot of soft light.
That's a
this is not
soft light.
Like physically trying to even put that into someone's actual kitchen. There's not enough physical room to actually have a good section of even lighting when you're talking about inverse square law. But
what I will say is
great lighting. It looks
what I wish Masterclass would do is do a Masterclass on how they shoot Masterclass, but I don't think that they would do that because they're really good at it. I mean, I've had a subscription to Masterclass since it had a subscription, and I get to only watch certain pieces. I can't get it to work on my Apple TV for some reason. So, but it is some of the content is okay. You know, like the cooking content is actually better than most of the other content, in my opinion. It goes hot and cold, you know, because they're really getting VIPs to get up there and kind of just say what they're going to say and then leave for a lot of it. The filmmaking ones are exceptional. The cooking ones are exceptional. The ones that are step by step are just out of control. The ones that are more of opinion are more of them just kind of riffing. But the video quality, unbelievable at every moment. You know, like they're the, you know, the high bar. Go ahead, Stuart, and then Jason, and then Chris, and then Stephen.
Okay, I'm going to put some noses out of joint because I would absolutely reject any suggestion to shoot this under tungsten. I would absolutely do it under daylight. Let's not forget that food items are where a lot of the dyes in the colors that we use, whether those colors be in the screens that fluoresce, in the clothes that we wear, those are the same sources. To get those colors right, you want to hit them with daylight first. It just solves so many problems. The other thing for breaking down the shots, if Guy's able to stop the video somewhere on one of the wide shots that's almost square onto the chef, and we have a look at the reflections on the colander itself, you'll see there's a large black area. That's blackout curtains across the front of tripods that they're filming from. So that's absolutely done in a large 3-wall studio.
That's the end of the set.
Any doubt,
right?
At all.
Well,
yeah, exactly.
That black area there is the end of the set. You know, so they built it out. So we just want to make sure that we're clear. This looks great, and when we compare it to our live shows, number one, definitely not live. Number two, not in a location. We just want to be fair to what we're doing. If we do cooking things or whatever, is that this is playing at an entirely different level of game than what we're doing. So we don't want to get too caught up in that. But it's an exceptionally shot piece, but it's not something we can reproduce live. Jason.
Well, and as hung sets go, I mean, it looks fantastic. So you know, who's going to complain? My question is a bit of a non sequitur, but not quite. That second shot that Guy showed us, was a slider, and it's the only slider in that entire sequence. So my question is, when should you use a slider? This is just more of kind of an ethereal production question. If you don't, if you've got a hung set and you've got all the, you could do whatever you want. When do you use a slider, just creatively?
When you want to bring the viewer's attention to the thing that's at the end of the slide.
Neil, and then Stephen. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say don't use a slide if you have less than 3 cameras. I feel like a slide, that's just a personal opinion. Specifically, I'm talking about on like a panel. So if you were to have like 2 people talking in a chair or whatever, or one person at a cooking show, if you only have 2 cameras, you might not want to use a slide. You might want to have something static, but that's just my opinion, having worked on multicam sets.
I would also just say use it with just a little bit. like there's the problem with slides is like, let's add pepper to everything. Let's add, and it is pepper, but you add too much pepper, to everything, it starts to get old. And so that's the challenge. Stephen, and then Bill.
Yeah, if you want to look at one of their master classes actually done in the home, take a look at the Alice Waters one. They managed to cram about 18 people into her little Berkeley house.
Go ahead, Bill.
You can often determine a lighting plot by looking at reflections, and I spent most of the time when I was watching this watching nothing but the master reflection or the master highlight on top of the KitchenAid. I think you can go back through this whole thing and watch what happens when they lift up the KitchenAid. You will note that there are 2 large soft, a key and a secondary, and you will see a whole bunch of other stuff. And if you just watch the top of the KitchenAid as well, you will notice that for every angle, they switch the intensity of the overhead. That's precision production.
And the thing to know is also when you look at that slide shot, that is not being done. That is a operator on a slider with a tripod. This is not like one of those little, like, I'm bouncing back and forth. This is a person that's actually operating that, and by hand. And when you have the money, it is the way to do it. Person is always going to be better than the machine. Sky.
That's probably like a doorway dolly. And again, the question is to Stuart with regards to your movement is either the camera is moving or the action is moving inside the shot. And so that's where I'm.
And I'm not sold it's a it could be a jib as well. Just remember that
most likely
that's more likely. Yeah,
dolly.
Yeah, it's a jib. Yeah.
Dana dolly, I think.
Yeah. So
I'm going to vote with Mickey on the Dana dolly. It doesn't move in the right shape arc for it to be a jib. Remember, a jib moves closer to the subject through the middle of the movement, whereas a dolly will move square or whichever way you've got the wheels pointed.
It's not moving very far.
It's tripod where you can move the handle, like you twist the handle certain degrees and it will rotate those in unison the wheels, so you can literally then turn it into a dolly shot.
Yeah. So it's a great shot, and I have to admit that I a lot of reason I watch Masterclass. I mean, I learned stuff from it, but I also I watch it as the high mark of where training could go. if all training was like
the side angle versus, as you say, the bread thing.
No, that makes me more comfortable. I'd rather have this or over the shoulder. The really high over top, but not quite on her side, makes me uncomfortable. I felt like I was off balance. I was over the top. And I've seen that in a couple of different ones. Yep. Next question.
The next question is from our own Paul Wallace down there in Austin, Texas. He says, what's the best device to get video and audio from a Spectrum cable box to an Atem Mini Pro?
To an Atem Mini Pro?
Yeah, you want to take your video, you want to take the cable video that's coming out and you get it. And the problem you're having is probably the HDCP, the security. Paul? You're going out of the Spectrum box. It's an HDMI. You put it in.
I have a podcast and show called TV Reviewer, and I want to do clips, of stuff, fair use clips.
But right now you're having an issue where it's a security issue, right? It just won't. The Atem Mini can't see it. Exactly.
I need a device that will bypass that security, the HDCP, and give a clean audio and video feed to the Atem Mini or any other device for that matter.
Go ahead, Jeffrey, and then Chris.
The easier way would just be to call up the app on your computer and go through the HDMI there rather than your cable box.
Okay, the computer will have the same problem a lot of times. Chris?
Yeah, I was going to say, not that I would recommend doing this, but it has been said on occasion that there are certain low-end converters that don't actually worry about DHCP.
I haven't seen ones for HDMI to HDMI. What I've seen is definitely HDMI to SDI. Is that now, Stephen Kimbrough, is that HDMI to SDI or is that HDMI to HDMI?
HDMI to HDMI.
And who makes that?
Looks like nobody.
Can you show it to us? Can you show it to put it? Okay, and then turn it over. It's hard to see. That's just a blank. Oh, is it blank on the other side too?
Yeah, it's blank.
Show us the ends. Show us the ends, just so we can see what it looks like. There we go. Yeah. So nobody makes that.
Nobody makes it.
So
it costs
it's a DHCP breaker.
Yeah, it just costs $9.
Yeah. Bill?
Gift certificate for an IP lawyer.
Go ahead, John.
HD Fury has some devices that solve unique HDMI compatibility. It's a little box, about $120.
There you go. A couple options. Next question.
I love that shot of John and little John. Michael Fredrickson from Gothenburg, Sweden says, any ideas how to bring in phone calls from a mobile when you stream using an Atem Mini Pro?
So I'm assuming you want to bring in contributors, people that you're going to do phone calls with. I mean, you can use a computer. I mean, the easiest way to do it is to use something like Zoom and just send the phone call out and send the audio out of your computer that's on Zoom, into whatever you're mixing the audio with. Zoom is really easy. People can just dial a phone number in and call it. Now, if you're doing real calling, so that is how do I get a caller in? If you're doing a call-in show, there are tools that do that. So Telos makes a series of tools that work on either IP or analog, or there's a whole bunch of different versions of it. I think it's the VX series, VX12s, VX6s. And you literally have a phone. So when we're doing big dial-ins, like with lots and lots of people, you have a phone. I can sit there and I ID them. I can pass them to the mixer. I can pass it to the engineer. You can set it up with IP connections so that it's all VoIP. So there's a lot of there. So Telos makes the tools that radio stations use. As far as having a person call in, you can do it really effectively with Zoom or GoToMeeting or anything else like that, or Uber Conference for that matter. But Chris and then Jason.
There's a couple of devices available. One would be the Zoom L8, I believe, that Mr. Wallace has used in the past. I don't recommend it. That have like a Bluetooth connection where you can actually Bluetooth to your phone. Also, I believe it's the Rodecaster Pro or something. Rode has a little audio system thing. Chris Comfort's nodding his head, and it too has the ability to take a Bluetooth signal and get it into your audio chain. Your sync is perfect, Alex. Thank you.
Sorry. JK Audio also has a variety of what are called innkeepers that can hook into an actual analog line, or a variety of ones that do Bluetooth that can do all those things. They have a lot of call-in tools that are basic hardware. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, you don't actually have to go with the innkeeper. The cheaper one that I want to say it's called the Adapter 3 is going to use Bluetooth, just straight up Bluetooth, and it's a single connection to a smartphone. That's still going to be tricky. I mean, I'm so tempted to recommend a cheap mixer and a single channel mix minus if you don't need video. The problem is that Atem Minis just they don't do a mix minus.
Well, I would do the mixing before that. I don't think I would try to do it directly into the mini. Go ahead, Paul, real quick.
Yeah, I have that Blue Driver F3, and I think Zoom has just canceled their offer to Chris Fenwick to be their spokesperson. And it does, I have one, and it does have a little place you can just simply put a cable in it and run it to your cell phone. Very easy.
Yep. Next question.
For the record, that's Zoom, the audio company, not Zoom, the teleconferencing company. Okay.
Correct. You're correct.
And yep, I did that one. Ken Jones up there in Seattle says, looking forward to the Resolve training. What preparation should we novices be doing to prepare?
What I would do is hopefully next week I'll have it all sorted out. So we'll be able to tell you what to prepare for. I'm just going back and forth with Ripple on it. But I would download it, download the Resolve and be ready to kind of and start. There's a ton of stuff on YouTube. I think that Blackmagic somewhere hidden on their website is a bunch of Resolve training. It's like crazy. It's like hidden. It's like in the catacombs of Blackmagic, but they have some stuff you can look at. But I think that there's some free stuff. But I would hold on to buying the Ripple stuff because I'm working on getting you a deal, on the Ripple training, which hopefully will, happen soon. Anyway, Sky and then Neil and then Chris and then Jeffrey.
Yes.
And we'll move on.
Just start with looking at the YouTubes, because that will get you familiar with the language and the terminology and what they have as the different, what we used to call rooms, and they're now little areas.
But
that
our goal,
want to get to.
I just want to make sure we're clear. Our goal is that we can start you from scratch. We're not expecting you to do anything beforehand. so you don't have to prep for it. I mean, we're really going to give you things to look at and then do. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. Go ahead, Neil.
If you want to take a little bit of an initiative, there's the color correction handbook. I'm not saying read all 500 pages before next week, but you can skim through the chapter selection on Amazon and look up tutorials based on something that might be of interest to you before watching this.
Who wrote that?
This one is the second edition by Alexis van Herkman. Yeah. Fantastic book.
Do you know him, Alex?
I know, yeah. I know Alexis. He's been on here a couple times. So we're going to try to drag Alexis on more often in the near future. So we'll see how that works out. Go ahead, Chris.
I just wanted to say that I too am looking forward to the discussion and learning Resolve a little better.
It couldn't happen faster for you, could it? All right, yeah. Jeffrey.
So I'm assuming it's going to be the full version, but the real question is, are we going to be loading 16 or 17?
We'll be doing 17, and my goal is to have most of the training be something you could do with the free version. Like that's the, to really focus most of our efforts on things that people can just, use. There may be a couple of caveats where we go, oh, this is a 17 Pro Studio, thing. But I think that most of what you need to do to learn it is done in the free version. Go ahead, Chris.
I think understanding how the project manager works and where it stores the files. So just in case you're a fan of backing up your projects, you'd want to put that maybe on a new location or know where it is so you know how to back it up. Once you get really
what I will say about Resolve that I found is that having a drive dedicated to your projects and all your assets makes life infinitely easier.
Sure.
You do not want your Resolve files or your assets on your home drive.
No, I have my assets on a dedicated drive, but it wasn't till I realized that the projects themselves, the actual metadata for the projects, was being stored on the home drive. So I had to move that after the fact.
So the best thing to do is just that you build everything on a drive that's going to be dedicated to that. Next question.
I need to go move some files. Can somebody Chuck Wojak from Concord, California says, what is your favorite new piece of hardware that you are ordering next?
Who has got something that they're ordering next? Go ahead, John Pareto.
I've got a list. I don't know, Mickey, let me see. I was just about to send it to Fenwick to send me some Christmas presents. I have no room behind my desk, so I'm doing auto pulls. I think, Jason, you're using auto pulls too, aren't you? So
auto pulls
behind your desk?
Oh, yeah, I have a few.
Yeah, so 2 auto pulls on either side of my desk to hang the lights, teleprompter, and the camera to clean everything up on my desk. Studio C, which is over here.
Right. No, very good. Anyone else got big plans? I am, go ahead, Stuart.
A new mouse for starters for pressing the button marked mute. And then trips to Bunnings, which is the local, let's see, what would be the equivalent in the US? Home Depot. Yep, and basically make up some custom mounts for lovely big panel lights that I got, and that'll actually go onto tripod stands and the like. Lots of cheap things to do over summer.
Go ahead, Neil.
A new chair for
A new chair.
sitting at this computer for hours on end per day, because this is plastic.
Oh no, that is not good. Yeah, exactly.
It's comfortable though, but it's not comfortable after 6 hours.
I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to use as a wireless system for this whole thing so that I can, listen to you and talk to you. And so I've got, it may be, I'm looking at the audio limited stuff just as the mic. I am looking at the phonak as the ear, but I also have some more used stuff in my house in the middle of nowhere. I may use some older electrosonic stuff that may or not be in the right frequencies. So, that I have access to. So, but moving to wireless so that it's not so much what I need right now, but one of my little end of the year projects is finally getting my garage kind of built out so that I can make it into a little lab that I can show you guys stuff and we can do, look at products and things like that. And so I'm not trying to get it done until February, but, but it's, cause I have a lot to do between now and the middle of January. So, but I'm, kind of slowly planning that process. Go ahead, Alex.
I don't know what next, but the last thing I ordered was an AirPods Max. I think that's what they're called.
Yeah. Did you order them?
Yeah. So I was wondering how many other people here ordered AirPods Max.
I haven't ordered it yet, but I will. What happens for me is I always don't get out of the gate fast enough on an Apple product. And then it's going to be like 3 months. And then I go, I'll get back to it. So that's kind of in the mode I'm in right now, is that I'll get back to it. I'm definitely going to get it though.
I think mine are coming on the 22nd of December, hopefully. So I might get them quite soon.
We will be expecting a review. Jason?
Along those lines, I've struggled with wireless, and I've yet to find a good solution. Maybe Guy can give me a suggestion about how to not have to wear 2 belt packs.
So there's two good solutions in my opinion. One solution is the phonak. You don't have to wear a belt pack. It's just a little earpiece that goes in, so you don't have to have a second one. But I don't know if it's less expensive. Unfortunately, there's no good small version of this. But the one that really works well is the Microflexes from Shure. But the problem is the whole system costs a certain amount of money. And so I don't know if you can piece it together where it's not that much. But what's cool about it is the belt pack itself is both the mic and the headset return. So there's 2 channels of PL that go through all so you can say out of 8 belt packs, these 4 get channel 1, these 4 get channel 2, or any combination of them. And it's all an online, but the Microflexes, we've used them as actual location comms because they're super easy and small, and you can get 2-way communication, super easily. And so, and they're all in Dante, so it's like a Dante hub, to make that work. And so
your inputs are completely Dante.
Yeah. There's no other. It's literally it's a little box that will manage it. You put the APs out, and it's literally Dante out of it to your mixer or whatever, and Dante back to it. And so it's using DECT. So it's going to be, you need to be careful of other things that might be using that, like Plantronics. But and I will say that the audio is not pristine. So it's not as good as Electrosonics transmitter or an audio limited transmitter. I don't have any clients that can hear the difference, but I can hear the difference. I can hear the quantizing that is going on with it, because of how it's managing that. But I don't know a lot of other people that can. I mean, if you listen to it on cans and you listen closely, you'll hear the squareness of the waveform. But otherwise, it's exceptional. It's built for companies. What's really cool about it, if you're working in a company or a school or whatever, is you just plug the mics in and you push a button and it just resets them all to whatever number is there. You don't have to think about which mic is which and how they're all working and everything else. And it just has a little charger. We used them for a long time and we liked them, Chris, for what they were.
Yes, since we got into some audio bits there and headphones and whatnot, I want to jump ahead to Neil Goldstein's question. Could Apple's upcoming headphones, what are they called? The
AirPod Pro Max or whatever.
Pro Max, yeah. Be a mobile solution for engineering spatial audio such as ATMOS?
It would give you an idea of what you're mixing. I don't think it, because what it's doing is it's using phase, to kind of figure out. It was really interesting. I was having really good conversation with someone who does a lot of surround sound, and we're going to get him on to talk about it. But he said it's interesting the way our brain works is we perceive position based on timing, not on volume. So it's when it gets the very subtle changes between the two ears, it tells our brain where an object, where it is. And so there's a phase, just a slight timing change is what's being used to create the feeling of it being around you. It's I think that the interesting thing is, I don't know if you could mix something that you'd want to release for everyone inside of one of these headphones. If you think that most people are going to listen to it in the headphones, then you could absolutely do that. Like if you think most people that listen to this are going to listen to headphones, but talking to a person that does surround sound for film, he said, I can tell whether if you did it in a 10 by 10 foot room with an ATMOS, renderer, or you do it in a 40 by 55 foot room, I can tell the difference because the resolution at which you're working is different. You hear it differently in a bigger room than you do in a smaller room. And you just can't mix for a theater inside of a smaller room or headphones. So it just depends on what you're mixing for. But if you think your primary listening audience is going to listen to it on their headphones, which is a valid possibility, then it probably makes a lot of sense. It probably makes sometimes more sense than the speakers, Mickey, and then Neil.
Yeah, definitely. Like that's why we still mix features that are destined for a theatrical release in a dubbing theater, a full huge room the size of a theater. And
how long is that theater in feet? Do you know?
Probably you're talking about in feet, minimum like maybe 90 feet.
Wow, 90 feet?
Like
wow,
long and then
that's huge.
And I don't know exactly wide,
Right.
but yeah, you want it roughly the size of a cinema
theater,
and then we do a remix for home and a smaller room for a domestic mix. But going back to the talk earlier about a single body pack with IFB and also your actual microphone transmission, Zaxcom has good solutions for that single body pack.
Yep. Jason? No? Oh, go ahead, Neil.
Well, I was gonna say on the AirPods Pro Max, it doesn't have a U1 chip, which means engineering, yes, but I mean, as far as consumption is concerned, again, I haven't read the white paper, but my understanding is that it doesn't have that positional audio thing.
Well, I don't know if that makes it it'll definitely positional, but anyway, it's U1. Are you talking about the U1? It doesn't have the U1 chip or the?
Yeah, the U1 chip is the one that can very specifically, allow it to calibrate on and off axis, which is what's going to determine the playout.
The U1 chip is the positional chip where you can find it if you lose your headphones. I think they decided that it's big enough that you shouldn't have to look for it. But but it's go ahead, Neil, real quick, and then.
Yeah, I was asking mostly for the fact of wondering if a sound engineer would get on an airplane and keep working instead of, having to, if you don't have access to your 10 by 10 or 40 by 50 Atmos setup, could you just throw these cans on when you're on a plane and actually, rough in 80% of the work you're doing? So
I think you could
keep functioning.
You could get ideas down, but you wouldn't be able to clean it up until you were in a place that you could hear it. Go ahead, Mickey, real quick, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, definitely with the Dolby Atmos render, they have a way for you to monitor in binaural, which kind of mimics sort of with delays and magical trickery, mimics a surround system. But yeah, you can rough it in, but you're not gonna print master from a set of headphones.
Yep. Next question.
Jake Hamilton in North Hollywood says, what is your policy regarding your business versus politics? Do you avoid being outspoken about politics on social media? Is it hazardous for your career, or is it filtering out folks you don't want to work with? And in a follow-up question, he's interested in how to bring up the finer points of the Protestant Revolution with some of his Catholic clients.
Go ahead, Jason.
Unless your business is politics, I'd say leave it alone.
Even if your business is politics, I'd say leave it alone. It's just it's a world of hurt. Like, don't talk about politics online. Like, if look, you can do whatever you want. Like, you can do whatever you want and do it. But I'm just telling you, you're just clipping your wings as a professional. Someone asked me what my politics are. I've worked for lots of Republicans and lots of Democrats at the highest levels, you know, and someone asked me what my politics are. I was like, that everybody's in focus and that they sound good. like that's, like that's my politics, and so, I really don't care, about what I think that everybody has the right to say their piece. I think that that they, and my job is to make them look good and sound good. And I just don't care what they believe, in that sense, I have set limits. I'm not going to get into what they are here. I have set limits of what I'm willing to do lately, or in the last 2 years, of like, I did a couple shows that I was like, I don't think I should have done that. But I don't make a big point of it. I just am not available, and so I feel like you can keep that stuff to yourself. And so I will post about politics on Twitter only if it affects my business. So you'll see me every once in a while go off on something, but it'll be very, it's very, very specific. If it affects, like, in California, AB5 affects me every day. So I tend to talk about AB5 because it's stupid. Anyway, go ahead, Jeffrey, and then Bill.
Yeah, the problem with politics is there's way too many bullies out there that think that if you say the wrong thing, that they're going to come after you with their pitchforks and bats and stuff like that.
Cancel.
And that's the scary thing about things.
The reality of cancel culture is just mob rule, and so you just have. But the thing is that why bother? Like, you don't need to put something up.
If you have somebody that, let's say you're working with somebody that all of a sudden goes on some weird rant, and your show has shows any type of link back to you, that becomes a problem. There was a show a podcast a few years ago that happened to, and they got out of the podcast business simply because of the fact of the lashback of that. So
so it's not. I don't think it's worth it. I mean, I don't think online tools are. I don't think that social tools are a good place for politics. I think it's a great way to make all your friends upset. Bill?
For me, the dividing line is where it crosses over from politics to morality. And I say that because there was only one time, and actually 2 times, and it was the same kind of thing, that I walked out of a voiceover session. The first one was the most important to me, and I got and read the script, and it was a pure pyramid scam that was simply trying to extract money from old folks. And I just said, no.
Well, I don't know if that's politics. I think that's just, Anyway, let's move on. Yeah, but look, we're going to keep moving. We're behind again, so we're going to speed up. Next question.
You're muted.
Thank you. How do you store, catalog, index, and present audio and video clips for live or a podcast?
Go ahead, Chris.
I will say this. One of the things I'm super passionate about as an editor, and I do live stuff too, is show flow and order, whether it's in a script or in a live show. There is a point when the writers are done and they start to engage with either production or post, where you want to kind of lock a script and you want to add a column that is a shot number. Assign everything a number. Even if a section of the show gets moved up, I retain that shot number, because I, as an editor, I'm going to start working on assets that go with those words. And so shot 17 has a graphic, possibly coming from your friend in London, that is going to go over those words, and I want it numbered that so that I can align stuff. And it works in a live show. When John and I worked on a show where we had 2 days of events, there was something like 40 events per day, and every pre-roll that was built for those were numbered based on the shot number, essentially.
Yep. Paul, real quick, and then Jason, and then we'll move on. Real quick.
Okay, as the uncredited asker of that question, Chris, you watch No Agenda. How do they do that? Atem and how does he insert
They've
clips?
talked about it in the past. They refuse to number things. John Dvorak thinks it's silly, and they are just that sharp.
You can do playout boards. There's a variety of pieces of software that are a board of all the things you may want to play, and they don't have to be in a list. And you just go, oh, I want that one. You click on it, and it immediately plays out. And the company that makes Playback Pro makes one, and then there's a couple other folks that make them that I just can't think of them off the top of my head. That are designed to just play out audio samples, and they are great because you just see a whole board of them and you can just select them non-linearly, and it's great for radio shows. I wish I had that when I grew up. I had to use carts, clunk, 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 and now I'm going to play this thing. Go ahead, Jason. We're going to move on. We got to move quickly.
Rogue Amoeba makes a great soundboard. As far as playing
that's what
out,
I was trying to think of. Rogue Amoebas. Real quick, we gotta keep moving.
HyperDex or MIDI for the Mac if I'm using a playout card.
I use for video playout. I use QLab. We line those up for that's the easiest way to play them out. Next question.
Jake Hamilton, also North Hollywood, says, in this new limited theatrical era we are entering, what are the anticipated consequences of streaming services not reporting viewing data?
Residuals. Residuals are the biggest thing. It's going to be, you're going to get paid what you get paid for the job, and that's probably the reality of how this is going to go. I think that people get paid more up front, but there's not going to be if this takes off, it'll do something else. I think that's what Chris Nolan is upset about. Christopher Nolan is upset about is not about whether his films are seen in the theater or not. It's whether he gets paid on per view, based on the revenue. Go ahead, Chris.
I heard you yesterday talking about the Warner Brothers, and I didn't realize what had happened until I looked it up afterwards. And the vice president of CAA came out against it, talking about, yes, of course, future contracts can be negotiated as such, but the ones that are up for movies that are in the can already or have already been negotiated, that's where it gets tricky.
I just don't think that I think residuals are just not going to be part of the
no,
anymore.
but they were for those deals that are not even showing yet. So that's where it gets tough. And I used to live off of residuals for commercial work, so I get it.
Yeah, no, it is. It's just, as visual effects artists, a couple of us were talking to each other. We're like, Chris Nolan said that it was like if, some people live on a couple days a year of work, and visual effects artists who have been under the, below the line for our entire career, we're kind of like, sounds nice, doesn't it? to only work a couple hours. Like we work like 60-hour, 80-hour weeks, all the time, and you eat what you kill, and you're constantly looking for the next job. And so there was a little bit of us just going, I probably wouldn't have said that on public radio. Neil, and then Alex.
You'd also ask for residuals based off of the merchandising. If
you
really wanted to.
Yeah.
You'd have to be a big name to do that.
Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
And J.J. Abrams does something clever and puts a piece of music that he's written in quite a lot of his stuff. So it's a totally separate reporting line, so that when the theme tune for Angel or Alias is used, or his song is used from one of the Star Wars movies, then he actually gets a separate reporting. So he knows actually a little bit more information about about viewings and stuff like that.
I think it broke the back of the whole theatrical release model. Like, I think that's what people are upset about, is that in the movie industry, I saw a movie. I watched the trailer yesterday, and it said, coming to theaters on February 22nd. I thought, really? Like literally, I couldn't believe that my brain shifted in 1 week to, really, you're doing theaters? Like, are we really doing that still? And so I think that that's going to be the case. Is a lot of people are going to, as soon as they know that they can watch it day and date, like this group of films, the 17 films that are going out, is the end of theater exclusive releases. There'll be some more, but in the within 5 years, there won't be any. And we'll look back on last week, as when it happened. I don't think it's the end of theaters. I think that we'll end up with Dolby level theaters, Dolby Cinema level theaters. That's all that's going to be left. That's what we go to see. It's like going to Broadway. We're going to go see it and probably pay a little bit more for it if we want to see it in the theater. And then that, and I think that Apple and Netflix and Amazon will own their own theaters, but they'll all be at that level because it's trying to showcase that for the people who want to see it in a theatrical release. But I think the multiplex is dead, and I think that I don't think that's coming back. Next question. Oh, I can't hear you, Chris. Here we go. Go again.
Okay. Dan Maliska from Nelson, British Columbia says, I need a low latency video, excuse me, one way, point to point for riding lessons. Not sure what he's talking about. Student has a camera with HDMI. Teacher in a different city has a laptop. What do I need in between? Prefer no computer On the student side, audio comm will use cell phones up to about $750.
I would just use the cell phones. You know what I mean? Like if, you know, I would probably just use cell phones for the whole thing. Go ahead, Stuart, and then Jason, and then Guy pretty quick.
I have an answer that is a piece of equipment that actually does fit within the budget. And it's actually something I'm looking at getting myself. And that would plug into the HDMI output of the camera. I'm assuming the camera is a GoPro to have HDMI out and it's probably helmet mounted. However, use the phone.
I think the phone is great. Yep. Go ahead, Jason.
Yep. FaceTime and an iPhone mount.
Yeah. Yep. Next question.
Once again, Paul Wallace from Austin, Texas says, what headset mic do the big time sports announcers use, like on College Gameday? And what is their audio chain?
Go ahead, Neil.
They use very expensive Motorola headsets.
Some are Motorola and some are AKG makes a series of them as well, and Baradynamic. You know, there's a couple different ones, but they're a variety of big headsets with high off-axis rejection. And we talked about it in an earlier day, but I don't remember which one. But we talked a lot about those. Sheps makes one. I was talking about the one that Sheps makes. I was like, it's really nice. Anyway, next question.
Ed Willick from Valley Cottage, New York says, Alex just mentioned AB5. With virtual events allowing us to work with people from anywhere in the world, what do those of us outside of California have to worry about when working with clients based in California in regards to AB5? I'm currently in that situation and not sure what to expect.
You have to worry about all the more work you get because it's easier to hire you than it is to hire people in California. Like that's the problem. It's just like boom, like just the dumbest law ever written. So like literally, it is easier for us to hire someone outside of California than it is to hire inside. So it didn't make a lot of sense when it was pre-COVID. It makes a whole lot less sense when it's post-COVID because I can hire. I'm now hiring people all over the world, and I hire. We figure it out, right? I hire who I need, where I need, and we figure out the paperwork. But I don't have to do AB5 for if I hire someone in New York or Nevada or whatever. I only have to do it when they're in the state.
And this is a California law?
It is it's comically the dumbest
thing,
law ever.
Alex?
Yes, they were trying to get Uber. They didn't get Uber because they lost the proposition. So now they don't have the thing that they were trying to hit, but they've hit everybody else. And it is literally the dumbest law I have ever seen written and actually posted in a state. Like it is just like in my lifetime. I mean, there's lots of dumb laws.
Do you want to share your opinion on it?
No, it's just amazing. It's just the amazing. And the problem is it's so dumb that I think that they're afraid of repealing it because then they would be bringing press back up to how dumb it was. Anyway, so they'll eventually repeal it because it's completely destroying the freelance process in California. Anyway, next question.
James Babbitt from the Difficult to Hire from San Diego says, hi, Alex. Could the streaming audio in Mukana be made available for the post-show meetings?
No. Now, I want to have a nice little window of like, hey, we stream this and make it available. I absolutely don't want to put the post-show or pre-show. I want people to be able to feel like they're talking freely and you see everybody that's listening to you talk. Next question.
Ken Jones from Seattle says, in Mukana, what is the purpose of the tag option?
I think the tag is new, and I believe it had, let's see here. I don't even have tag in my we did start adding something for questions, is to let you push things to second hours. Oh, I think it's in the questions. If you ask a question here, you can say, why is, and then I think, just ignore that one. But yeah, you can tag it as second hour. So the tag function is there. We just added that. That's why I'm a little unsure about how I asked for it. And Chris was kind enough to. So once you ask a question, you can tag it, and you can tag it as, right now, you could tag many different things, right? That we would lay out for you. Right now, you can say, oh, I want this in the second hour. That way, it's easier for us to sort later. So good thing to use. Next question. Nope, you're a lot quieter than we expected. Yeah, there you go.
It's really weird. With all the thank yous that Mickey gets from the rest of the panel, just wondering if office hours tech support is his new full-time gig.
I wish. It's a lot more fun.
Don't we wish? Someday, Mickey, it'll be our full-time job. All right, Stuart. You think I'm kidding,
I'm just
right?
wondering if there's a business model for any of us with a room and a WLM to join people's meetings, check their sound for them, and let them carry on their work. And how do I advertise for that? Zoom technologist, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good idea, actually, is to itemize like things that you could just have as Zoom support, where the Zoom prep, Zoom this, Zoom that.
Meter reader.
Meter reader. Yeah, go ahead, Sky.
That was the conversation we had working with Chris and John this last week, and Linda and the gang. But to have a Zoom producer, and that was the first point of contact. And
Sky,
what I realized was,
I have a new title for you. It's called Speaker Foo.
Gesundheit. Not sure. Do I want that title?
All right, we're gonna keep moving on because we have to get to the last questions. We're running a little heavy.
Charles Hodge from White Lake, Michigan. Is it MI Michigan? Has anyone watched the Amazon Prime show James May, Oh Cook? James May from Top Gear fame. If so, what do you think of its production?
Go ahead, Stuart.
Well, the BBC's got a lot of money to spend, or whoever is doing it. But it is no better or worse than our panel's own Sky Gleason's efforts. I'd say that for sure.
Well, I think that, so they're obviously shooting with Super 35 sensors. They are, this is what, it's an interesting juxtaposition. If you look at this and then you look at the Masterclass of what Guy showed earlier, is you see what happens when you shoot something mostly live to tape. I think that they try to kind of just shoot this more off the cuff, a little less, they kind of set it all up and shoot it. They may have done a couple reshoots, but it wasn't like they designed every shot. They also, obviously, if you look at some of the reverses and everything else, they decided that handheld is a really important thing. I mean, I get the kids like the handheld thing, but there's like why did you need, you'll notice the Masterclass didn't do that. Go ahead, Stuart.
Actually, I take my previous comment back because Sky's audio is cleaner.
And I have to admit that I was just looking at the visuals. I didn't listen to it because we were all talking about it. So it's pretty. I haven't watched the show. I scanned through it before the show because I saw the question pop up. So it has that uncomfortable camera shot that I was talking about earlier, and that's why I suddenly cued off on it, where the camera is almost above, but just a little this way, and it's not enough this way to make it work. I think it has to be over to the side of the cook, but it shouldn't be over and on the other side of the cook. It just feels like, as Chris said, it feels like the water's going up, and it just, there's a whole thing that doesn't work there. And it's only a couple inches different, but I think that was kind of problematic. Go ahead, Chris.
I going back to the overhead cooking shot, I really think it needs to be from the point of view of a 10-foot tall person standing opposite the chef, looking down on the workspace. That's what feels right to me. On the bread thing we watched, we crossed the line and we were looking at it from the chef's point of view, but not really.
For a bunch of training that we did, I think I showed a picture of it earlier. We would take a jib and put the camera right either over or right over the shoulder of a person, and I felt like that was a really great view of what it looked like to do it. Go ahead, Stuart.
Yeah, there's just one problem with the way Chris has suggested to do the shot, and it's actually not with the camera or the lighting or the way it looks. It's with whether the talent is wearing something that is more likely to be seen on Instagram to get viewers. Now, a professional chef clearly would wear a professional chef's outfit, not an Instagram outfit. So we've got to be a little cautious about that sort of camera angle.
Okay. All right. Anyway, I like the short depth of field. I like the Super 35 kind of look. I feel like he didn't hit the it's definitely a look that they're trying to go at. I feel like they are trying to get kind of the quote unquote film look, which is not, there's no pure black. So the contrast is not quite there. It's literally like a tiny tweak would make that whole thing pop, and so it's not quite there. So
there's no less than like four cameras there. That's a minimum of 4 cameras.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of cameras. I mean, when
That's
we
a
do
lot of
cooking stuff, we usually have 5, 6, 7 cameras. You know, like it just makes it a lot easier. You can do it with less cameras. You're just running around everywhere. You know,
Well,
it's really hard.
It's a football game, so you're just trying to follow the action.
Yeah, especially if you're doing it as live. I mean, like I will argue that probably most of the MasterChef done was one or 2 cameras. You know, max. You know, like because it's designed. But when you're doing something where you're trying to follow along live, the more cameras you have, the better it's going to be to grab it. That and planning and rehearsal, and you know, the more times you can cook it, the better. Jason,
and I love their soft lighting too.
Yep.
Are they intentionally racking focus? I mean, I love a short depth of field in bokeh too, but like when you do it on a hand shot, I feel like they got the focus and then they rolled in and then out of it almost intentionally.
They probably did.
I have filters that do that.
I know exactly. Go ahead, Alex.
At least James is actually, he looks at the camera. That masterclass shot of her looking at the other camera from the 3/4 shot, I can't stand it now when the majority of the shot, when you see the person looking into a camera is fine, but every once in a while they do this cut to the side and they're looking off and I suddenly say, who are you now looking at? You're not looking at me anymore. It's really frustrating.
I really think that as best you can, you only want to see the chef look straight at you, and we use teleprompters to make sure they look straight at you, or you should see their hands, and I do everything I can avoid to showing their face at any other time. You know, I don't want to, I agree with you that eye contact is important.
Yeah, we're really struggling with that with Madeline because she keeps wanting to watch the monitor. It's like, no, look at the lens. But she's a producer, so she's used to watching in the monitor.
So hide the monitor. Like really.
Yeah. Well, we got a teleprompter. We're bringing in the teleprompter. So
but hide the monitor. Don't you can't stop looking at things that you can see. So the way you fix that is you get it out of the people's eye line. Like we don't even when we do crews, you know, we will black out as much of the crew. Every person that we can black out, we're going to black out so that there's no eyes. Like we don't want you to ever see somebody else's eyes if you're a host. And so we can't do it all the time, but we try to keep on adding blackout things so that you see less and less people. And then we purposefully tell a lot of our crews, don't look at them while they're shooting.
No,
like literally don't look. Like if you look up, their eyes will immediately go to you, and so it's just it's like a lower brain issue. Next question.
The other tricky part is we have to
keep moving. Next question.
Amazon Prime. TJ Asher from Minneapolis says Amazon Prime video app on Apple TV. The 100 millisecond issue remains. It's the only app with the AV sync issues. The wireless audio sync reset Jason mentioned just last week only applies if you have wireless audio. Nothing in my home theater is wireless. Any other ideas to get the sound and picture to sync? Note, Google is useless trying to find solutions in this particular issue.
For me, it would be like stop watching Amazon, or put up with it. You know, like I would just be like, I put up with it, or I'd get really good. I'd figure out some way to automate the fact that I'm going to Amazon. I hit a little button and it changes the sync, and then I go back. Jason.
All right. At this point, it's got to be something along the lines of your TV. I would check that, and I would also check DNS on the Apple TV. But switch your port, use a computer monitor. The Apple TV does not have this problem, so it's going to be something stupid.
Well, especially if it's just Amazon, there's something going on in the service, and I have to admit, I don't watch Amazon often enough to know. I don't watch the service often enough to know whether it's a service issue or not, because I don't know of anything that I've watched on Amazon for a long time. Jeffrey?
Yeah, I watch on Roku. There's not a 100 millisecond there. So the easiest thing would just be to get a Fire TV box. But if you don't want to do that,
But I don't think it's the hardware. I
want
just
to reroute it through or something like that. That would be the best solution.
I'm hesitant to think that it's the box. If other services, generally when other services are working and not that one, it leads you to believe that. Now it could be the app. It could be the iOS app is having some issue, so that's possible. You know, in some kind of buffering or HLS issue. So I'll have to go look at it on my TV. I don't know because I don't really. My wife watches stuff on Amazon Prime. I don't. So I just haven't seen it. So now we are shifting gears. We're late. We've cleared all the questions, and we're talking about there was a second hour request to talk about what do we do with our gear? Like after we finish using it, we buy a lot of gear. you know, how do we replace it? When do we replace it? Where do we put it? So there was kind of a general, and there was a bunch of votes for it. So I figured I'd throw it in here. People are trying to figure out. I am not very good at it. I will let you know. I have a tendency to keep my gear for a very long time. In fact, I had a warehouse one time that was 10,000 square feet, and probably 1,000 square feet was dedicated to, you know, with shelves, like vertical, like, so I don't know how much cubic feet was dedicated to stuff I probably will never use again. But having it there was very hard to go. Part of it was time to go through it. The other thing was, it's always that one time when you go find that cable that will fix the problem and that isn't made anymore. It creates positive reinforcement for keeping all those cables. So so you know, what do we do? What do people do with their old gear? Are people here? Do you guys turn it over quickly? Do you sell it? Do you keep it? What's the process? Go ahead, Paul.
2 words: cargo container.
So just keep going. Just keep going. And what I will say is that being able to move forward from that hardware. Now, I donate a lot of my hardware, so that's been the thing that I've done the most likely, is I've donated a lot of the hardware to my school, the school that I built in Rwanda. I've donated it to high schools and colleges. I probably could get some money back for it, but I kind of like the feeling of donating it to things that are moving things forward. So I think the vast majority of the hardware that I've gotten rid of has been given to schools mostly. Go ahead, Jason.
Oh, you beat me to it. There's also a financial incentive. If you donate it to a 501c3, you're probably going to be able to claim more of a tax write-off than you could get back if you were to be selling it on eBay. So, I mean, there's actually, it feels good and it's actually better.
Right. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
If I look at an item and I say that I made my money off of that item, I'm not going to sell it back. I just don't find that very helpful. But the more thing that I'll do is, if I don't have it, if I can't use it in my production flow, like for instance, my iPhone, I switched out my different iPhones. My 10 is now my secondary iPhone, and then my 7 will be probably gazelled out or something like that. Otherwise, I'll downcycle it to people that are starting to do different things, because I get a lot of hardware that's given to me. And a lot of times it's also meant to be there's a specific line, then that's basically not for resale. So if I downcycle it, it works. Everybody gets happy. They get a product. I get a product. We're all good.
Yep. Go ahead, Paul.
Old phones can be repurposed as security cameras, something like IP Cam. There's a whole bunch of apps that you can put on them, and just set them up to guard the rest of your stuff that you haven't given away yet.
I am going to try to, the project that I was hoping to do this weekend, which hopefully I'll do next weekend, is getting a bunch of iPhones to do a little cooking thing for my house. I was going to invite everybody in and do this little thing where I do like 4 iPhones. The Hosmok's got me thinking about it, of like, I'm going to grab a bunch of iPhones using Filmic Pro and put them all into an Atem Mini and then switch with them and everything else. And I just haven't, I didn't quite get it turned around, but I think that would be a fun way to use old phones as little cameras. Go ahead, Stuart, and then John.
So within reach is a Canon XL1 in its road case, a Panasonic MS4, well, actually 2 of those, 486s from the early 90s that still work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on whether the gear is broken or if it still works. Because if the gear still works, for me, it makes great film props, especially if something's set pre-digital and you need like an early phone or an early camera to look right for the scene. But what a lot of people might not know is a lot of shipping companies that move the big containers around the world, those containers come up for sale fairly regularly once they've hit the end of their lifespan, and actually can be put in many places and used for really good storage.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, for me, since the rate of the depreciation and also the usable lifespan of sound equipment tend to be very long. The rate of depreciation is very low and the usable lifespan is very long compared to, like, say, cameras, which sometimes tend to be a flavor of the month kind of deal. And also, since I only acquire equipment when I need it, it doesn't make sense for me to sell them. So, like, the only time I can recall that I've sold equipment is when I had to sell off a 7 Series 788 just because we needed to match up 688 recorders for a reality show. That's the only time I recall selling gear.
Yeah. Paul, and then Bill, and then Chris.
Stuart mentioned shipping containers. They come in basically 3 sizes. You can get a 20-foot, a 40-foot, and they also have a 45-foot. And there's 2 heights. There's the normal height, which is 8 foot, and then you have the height cubes, as they're called, which are about a foot taller. And they're about $2,000 to $3,000. They bring them out of Houston. There's a lot of dealers here in Austin. They're probably dealers all over the place. They're notoriously hot in the summer. So I recommend you put them in the shade. If you've got a shady grove of trees or something, I recommend that. Or otherwise, you've got to put some kind of coating over them or insulate them somehow.
You have a remarkable amount of knowledge about shipping containers, Paul.
It's great. It's great. Bill, and then Chris.
Over the course of the last probably 10 years, I've gone through at least 5 cycles of major recycling as I've moved
I was waiting for you to say I've gone through 5 shipping containers. And I was like, oh my God, I feel like
no. Homeowners associations and just zoning laws would not allow a shipping container on a lot of properties, urban. So anyway, I've gone through this a lot. It used to be for electronic stuff, particularly the Boy Scouts used to run recycling Sundays once a month or something like that. I like supporting that. In the end of times, though, California's been great, and Arizona was too, actually, about doing specific electronics recycling days where they're going to go in and take out the rare earth stuff and reclaim the gold for some value and stuff like that. And so at least they're going to dump it into the landfill after all the value is taken out of it, rather than me doing that.
Right. And one thing that I did when I was a kid is I would take things that were broken and pull them apart. And so I have given my son a whole bunch of screwdrivers and things like that. When things aren't working, I'm like, just tear it apart. He'll just rip through the whole thing. Like, he'll just like, how does this work? And what is this connected to? And I think that that's part of growing up, for me anyway, is just to tear through things, because you learn things about just looking at it. And then
growing up, I did that last week.
Yeah, I know, exactly. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I was supposed to work with an assistant for photography work. And one of the things we talked about was I have old lighting gear. After I upgraded my lighting gear, I kept the old stuff, and I was going to give him the old stuff and teach him how to use it. And that was going to be part of the exchange and part of the teaching, the tutelage, I guess, of how to light, and then here's the lights to do it with, and old remotes and those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. So we just never got a chance to do it because of COVID. So
yeah, absolutely, John.
Yeah.
So if you're near a university, there are plenty of students who are on tight budgets. So when I was actively teaching, I had no problem figuring out where to put my old gear. The other is many times I gave it to some of the people at state parks. When we're doing some of our production at state parks, it's a little risky. We've lost 1 or 2 pieces of gear, and it's easier to have them be using something that was donated, so they don't have to worry about the food chain of, telling them they had to replace it because they dropped it in a lake. Right. And for your cooking show, Alex, think about using Cinemaker Director with your 4 iPhones wirelessly. It will work perfectly.
Okay, I'll check that out. Cinemaker Director. Okay. Stuart. And by the way, I'm planning to use a bunch of iPhones. My plan is to use everything I can find with the phones. I have this idea of using a bunch of phones. I may or may not actually be using a couple different iPhone 12s, just to all just to sync it all up. One of the things I've been trying to figure out is whether Filmic will output the HLG from the, will it do the log, or not log, but HDR output when it does a clean feed out, if it's set to that. I don't think it will, but it's going to be a feature request.
I'm going to put in the chat. I did a website, which is a production studio in a backpack, which was all iPhones and an iPad to be a full 4-camera studio.
Yeah, that's great. Go ahead, Stuart.
Just on what Paul was saying about the different heights of containers, if everyone wants a giggle before we move on, Montague Bridge, South Melbourne.
Okay, excellent. Next, we only have a question. This could be a short day if we don't get more questions in about this. Maybe this wasn't the best subject matter. But I think it seems like a lot of people wanted to see it. Go ahead. What's the question, Chris?
I'm going to pre-raise my hand for this one. Is there a method for doing your replacement cycle year after warranty? ? Go
ahead, Chris.
So I'm always very interested in the process of how to not just run our businesses, but to run them profitably. And one of the things that I always tell people is don't borrow money from somebody else who's going to charge you interest, but to borrow money from yourself, who you could probably talk yourself into not charging yourself interest. So what I like to do is I look at everything around me. Yes, of course, the computer, the monitor, maybe my speakers, the chair that I'm sitting in, the table that I'm on, and I give everything a shelf life. Like how long do I really want to use a computer? In other words, when do I want to replace it? And I take that computer and I say, you know what, in 2 years, I'm really going to want a new computer. So I take the purchase price of it, divide it by 24, and I start setting aside that money to buy the next one the day I buy the first one. And if you do that for everything around you, and you stick to it and you don't spend too much time on office hours where you're shamed and guilted into buying things you probably didn't really need, you'll find that when you're never going to be in that situation where you go, oh, gee, I really just need this thing. I'll put it on a credit card. And then all of a sudden you're spending more on it. So ultimately you'll save money if you start saving to purchase the new thing the day you buy the previous thing.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Jason?
Yeah, +1 on what Chris said. Every check that my company gets, it's straight away 30% off the top. And that's, after taxes are withheld and what have you. And like that is my operating capital. I haven't had a credit card. I personally have an Apple card with a really small limit. That's 6 months old. Other than that, I've never had a credit card.
That's great. Amazing. Now, next question. Are you there, Chris?
He is there. And a couple more just came in. Sorry. Lou Perez from Phoenix says, anyone have a good process or thoughts on destroying data prior to disposal of gear? Alex, do you want to chime in on this?
I had to dispose of data of over 1,000 drives, and it was a half-inch drill through the drive and 3 hard strikes with a sledgehammer. And
drill press.
We felt that was sufficient to make it harder. And of course, we're not dealing with state secrets. These are like, just corporate, whatever. So we figured that was high enough that you're not going to try to go in and grab some bits. We go ahead, Stuart, and then Chris, and then Bill.
Rather than a sledgehammer, a ball peen hammer, which has a domed surface, concentrates more force, so it's less. When you've got a lot of them to do, trust me, the difference between one of those and a sledge is good. The other thing, wood chipper. You've just got to destroy, and it doesn't matter if it's a spinning disc or if it's an SSD.
Boy, that's a green solution you have there, Stuart.
For some reason, I just want to say. So I suppose that's your project in the wood chipper. So anyway, there's a movie. There's a scene somewhere of someone angry throwing somebody else's drives into a wood chipper. Anyway, Chris, we're going to use that someday. Good.
I was wondering how you came up with half-inch and was 3/8 deemed not.
There was a lot of discussion about it. It was how hard it would be to pull through and everything else. There was a lot of discussion about it.
And how many drill bits did you go through? Did you use one drill bit for all 1,500 drives?
I think we got one through it with one drill bit. I don't think there was. It's not very hard metal. So
use a mason bit, you'll be fine.
Yeah, it was. I think we got through all of them with it. Go ahead, Bill.
I am a great proponent of smashing stuff. It is just fun, smashing, shooting. But the other thing
is for the first 200. Yeah, I'm just telling you. And then after that, you're like, oh my god,
you get a couple dozen, it's great. But the other thing is, remember, there is a thing called the Curie point on any kind of magnetic or stuff, and that is, as it gets too hot, it scrambles everything. So literally, you can bake and or throw into a fire old hard drives, and eventually, if it hits the Curie point, it's going to be unreadable.
Drive Savers is 5 miles from my house. They have drives there that came out of fires that are charred, and they use them as examples of stuff they've gotten data off of. So it's an interesting by itself. It's an interesting problem. Next question.
A lot of schools don't want you to donate computer equipment. Will they accept photography gear? How does one go about donating gear to a school?
It's actually harder than you'd think. Like I actually have a hard time. I've donated to schools where I know somebody, like it's like, hey, you can borrow stuff, you can come and get it, kind of thing. I haven't gone through the whole official process of any of those things. But I have offered it to my kids' school a couple times, different schools, and they've been like, no, we don't want it. I'm like, okay, John.
Schools are very hard to formally donate to, but many schools have a foundation connected with it and a number of private schools. But getting a school district to accept an actual donation and getting any response from it is pretty hard.
Yep. Go ahead, Chris. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say it's probably really difficult, mainly because the technology advances so quickly that they kind of want the kids. I would imagine they want the kids to be using something that's somewhat relevant. I mean, when I was in school,
I was offering. I mean, like I offered them a full set, like not like oh, here's some wires. It was like, I will offer you a 3-camera system that you can shoot stuff, because they didn't have any, and it was kind of like, no, we don't want it. And I was like, okay. Then I stopped. I did it twice to 2 different schools, and then I stopped trying. But it was an interesting. But I understand it was hard. Next question. Let's keep moving.
All right. Boom, boom. Excuse me. The next one would be Brody Hefner from New York City says, quality photo lenses tend to hold their value and may be resold. Is it also true of cine lenses, or do they tend to lose value more rapidly?
Go ahead, Stuart.
It's actually not true. Cine lenses never lose their value. Good lenses will change hands at phenomenal values, especially something like a Cook or an Ingenue. They can be 50 years old and they will pull more money now than what they get when they were new.
Yeah. And if you take care of them, a couple scratches or nicks in the front, and then they're not so good. So you do have to be very careful with the glass itself, and taking care of the lens. But if you take care of the lens, it'll drop 30% as you buy it, and then over the next 5 years, it'll drop another 20% that you could sell it back for about half of what you paid for it. These are big lenses. And like we have one right now, we don't have it, but someone who bought it from me, I paid $32,000 for that lens, and B&H will still buy it for 13. That's 5 years later or something like that. So it's dropped a bit, but it's a servo, it's a Cabrillo, Fujinon for Cabrillo lens. It's not a classic lens. It's, but I was surprised that it was still worth as much as it was. Go ahead, Jason.
I just a quick thing on the Curie point. Curie point of iron is 1400 degrees Fahrenheit. So like, it's going to be a while. Like you're going to destroy the hard drive a long time before you're going to lose ferromagnetic
we're past
alignment.
That. Sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, has anybody ever been approached by somebody like selling a lens where they'll say, oh, so-and-so like film was shot on this, like this was used on this Bond film, or
there's some people who collect it.
Is that a thing?
Yeah, there's some people that collect the stuff, definitely, but you have to have paperwork to show it, like just saying that you have it,
right,
is often not enough.
I was approached once to buy a mixer that U2 had used on the Zoo tour.
Right. Yeah. It has to be a collector at that point. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I've not been directly approached, but I know that sort of mindset exists with microphones as well. Mm-hmm. Where, hey, this was what so-and-so used to record this album.
Right. And we've, I had a F950 that was used in Star Wars Episode 2 and 3. And so you tell clients that, and then they would tell their friends and their partners and the people that they were coming in all the time, like that was a Star Wars camera. So it has some business value, but
Cache.
At some point it was still not as powerful as the other cameras that I had.
Next question. The important part about that is the historical value of it, because that was the first HD camera used for film.
Right.
Kyle Hammond from Chicago says, do you get paperwork from a 501c3 when you donate so you can write it off?
Go ahead, Jason.
If you don't, you can't.
Right. Yeah, you need the paperwork to make that work. Next question. And most 501c3s that are worth their salt can generate that paperwork really fast. Like that is like to get things. Being able to generate that paperwork is something that generally they can do very fast. And if they can't, you're probably not working with a very serious 501c3, because that is their lifeblood, is people giving them things. So next question.
Ed Willick from Valley College, New York says, Alex, being a proponent of hardware versus software for most gear, ATEM switchers versus using vMix, for example, are you finding it harder to find people who want to buy your old hardware these days?
I don't have as much old hardware, so I've talked about it in the past. I had a company that went belly up, so I sold it all in one big, hundreds of thousands of dollars changed hands in one big pass, and I sold everything in the warehouse, and then I moved on. And so now most of the stuff that I have at the current is only a couple of years old. So I haven't had to do that refresh yet. I still think there's a pretty strong demand for hardware because it's stable. So it's I don't think that the software boom has depressed the demand for hardware yet. I mean, Blackmagic's making their hardware as fast as they can make it right now. So it's probably not. I mean, they literally can't get out of the factory fast enough. Go ahead, Jason.
So as a rule, I mean, I would just say abstractly, the closer that it is to something like a computer that iterates very quickly, the faster it's going to lose its value. The farther away in the in the process it is from a computer, like a servo cinema lens or a camera, the more it's going. The more it's going to. A C-stand is a perfect example. Yeah, the more it's going to retain its value.
And oftentimes, the more you're likely to rent it, because like C-stands, I have C-stands that I need that if I have to use them every day, I use them. But tripods, C-stands, glass, those tend to be things that I rent because they're expensive up front, and oftentimes they're very inexpensive to rent. C-stands come in packages for $20 a day or something, or $30 a day. I mean, or they come with a grip truck that has tons of them, and so they're very inexpensive. Lenses compared to what their retail value is very low. Tripods especially. We use tripods that would cost me $8,000 to $15,000 to use, to buy the tripod. But it rents for $150, or $100, and it's because it's been paid for 10 years and it's still usable. Go ahead, Mickey, and then Bill.
Sorry, I didn't have my hand.
Okay, Bill.
Yeah, so there's another cost which is really subtle and kind of hidden, which is the storage and schlepping cost. So it may be that you get 5 or 6 C-stands, but if you're in an apartment in the early part of your career, just figuring out where you're going to put them and having extra stuff to move becomes a hassle. As you get more fixed base, you tend to get more gear like that. So just kind of balance off. Sometimes dragging stuff around is more problem than it's
definitely the number one reason we've given or sold stuff is to clear rented space. It's been more space management has been more important to us than probably almost anything else. Last question. Then this one didn't turn out to be as big, but we have a post show that we can still do. So anyway, we're gonna jump to that soon. Go ahead.
Dan Huber from Erie, Pennsylvania says replacement cost of technology purchased with a grant should always be built in. How would you approach those that push back on this? John, have you run into this? He's talking about John Olson. Replacement cost on technology purchased.
Yeah, I mean, with grants, typically you hope you're going to use the equipment completely and then be able to continue using it after the grant. I haven't had grants that have been that long where the equipment cycled out. But that's how the lab that I had at CSU Monterey Bay, basically we were constantly getting grants to constantly update our gear and solve the problems that we had to be able to make the grant be successful. When the grant is over, the university acquires the equipment. Every once in a while we had a grant with some very high level gear, very expensive. We'd rent it. And then there were other times that the equipment that we bought actually stayed with the people who were granting us the grant we were working on.
Yeah, you try to, like, one of the problems we have with the school in Rwanda is that we got a big grant to buy all the stuff, and then they just when you can't find the money again, you end up with just the stuff slowly winding its way out. So it is something that I think is important. I don't think it's something you can always do, but it's definitely something that makes a difference, is knowing what the replacement rate's going to be.
The other thing is that the universities, granting agencies tend not to want to buy stuff for you. They want to pay for your time and your effort and the connection with the university. They really think the university should have the tools that it needs to do it. You're providing the expertise. They don't like really spending a lot of money on hardware, but sometimes there's very specialized equipment that you need.
Yeah. So we have, I think this one was a shorter subject. It was one of those things I was like, we haven't really talked about something like that before, and we'll give it a shot. And there's not a lot of questions. Hopefully that was a useful conversation. We are going to now bump to the, go ahead, Stuart.
Just a thank you to the panel. I had a gig on the weekend that was a wedding of all things, which I absolutely hate doing. I took an SDI feed from the guy who was doing the camera, ran it through Shogun and vMix, and followed the rules we've discussed before about having an animated sequence before going live and that sort of stuff. Right. And all we've gotten since is comments on how good the stream looked, how good the audio was. So just thank you to everyone in the panel who's helped me upskill over the last few months.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that all of us are getting better. Just, again, it's not a certain skill set or a certain tip that we're figuring out. It is a set of wisdom, like a thing of we just know a lot of things about that, and we think through it in a more detailed way because of the conversations we have every day. So I know I'm getting that too. So it's really great. So thank you, everybody. Thanks to everyone in the panel. Thanks to everyone in the attendees. I am going to go ahead and open the post show, and I'll be there for a minute or two, and then I have to go. I have a 9 o'clock shoot that I have to run off to virtually. I have to just jump into it. So anyway, so I will. I'll see you all in just a second.
See you in a second.
Yep.